Hey guys, so in the last video, Jo from Dragon Lords taught me how to choreograph my own kung fu movie fight scene, and the setting for that was this kind of quite apocalyptic looking dilapidated village here on the outskirts of Shanghai. So it's actually right near where I live. I live in a suburb called Sanlin on the edge of the city. So I wanted to take you to the village again to really kind of show you this juxtaposition between old and new that's so prevalent here in China. And also I wanted to share with you the lore of Monkey Steals Peach, kind of, you know, where did Monkey Steals Peach, the channel, come from? What was my story to starting this channel and to getting to where I am today? So this village that we're going to is kind of a remnant of the old rural Shanghai. I'm not talking about like hundreds of years ago. I think this village probably dates back to, you know, maybe like mid-20th century, sort of the early like Chairman Mao era of China, possibly. I'm not exactly sure, but I don't think it's particularly old. Anyway, it's kind of a remnant of that because this is all kind of new construction, new development here. So this road all along behind me, this has been built since before I left China previously in 2020. None of this was here. This was all just under construction. Much of it still is. And up ahead there is this like absolutely massive train station for this high-speed train that basically links the two airports opposite sides of Shanghai, from Pudong Airport to Hongqiao Airport. Previously it took over 2 hours to get from one airport to the other because you had to take public transport or you know, a taxi or whatever, but they've cut this down now to about half an hour through this new rail network. And this station, considering it's out here in the middle of nowhere, is absolutely massive. So I'm going to show you that, and then I'm going to show you the village next to it, which is probably soon to be destroyed for some other sort of development project, I don't know what. And yeah, I'm going to share with you the story of Monkey Steals Peach. Alright, so as we're approaching this station, there's some sort of big construction project going on. You can see here, this is the little cabins for the construction workers. I don't know whether they're offices or dormitories or what, but there's a whole load of construction going on here. I've got no idea what it will end up being, but you can see over on the left side is another little dilapidated village that's still there, still not been destroyed yet, although it's sort of halfway there. The traffic lights are still not working here. I don't guess there's really any point because this road doesn't really lead to anywhere. But I'm going to show you the station now as we're approaching. There's a whole load of DDs parked up here waiting for passengers. Yeah, there you go. That's obviously whatever they're going to build, probably a big complex of apartments or something. And here we go, the China Dream. So this is this absolutely massive train station, which is, it's actually a very cool design when you look at it. So they've sort of built all these like platforms that you can go up onto, and they've sort of made them almost like what do you call it? Not like an amphitheater, but like a stadium kind of thing. So it's all like stepped, and you can sit on the steps, and it doesn't look very doesn't look like they've upkept it very well though, because there's all grass growing all over it. I'm assuming they tried to have little bits of lawn on each of the steps, but they've just not maintained it, so it's all sort of grown over. Anyway, we'll go up the bigger one because I think we can get a better view from the top, and you can see the grass has grown pretty badly all over this now. This does give me like serious Pyongyang vibes as well. So yeah, you can see the state of this. They've just pretty much given up halfway through, it feels like, or maybe they've just set up the basic infrastructure and they'll come back in, I don't know, a year's time or something and kind of finish it off. It'll probably end up looking really nice when it is actually done. We'll have to see though. But yeah, so we can go all the way up to the top. We can have a look at this construction site. Yep, there we go. The never-ending machine of China, always building, developing, changing. I figure they're probably building either another shopping mall or a big residential complex, but I have absolutely no idea. And that old village is here. It's in this kind of wooded area here. So I said I was going to tell you guys about the lore of Monkey Steals Peach. How did it come into being? So let's start right from the beginning. I started martial arts when I was a kid, I think about 7 or 8 years old. I used to watch the Power Rangers, and then I started doing karate and later taekwondo. I can't remember any of it, I was just a little kid. But then when I got to 14, I started watching kung fu movies with my friends, and the only Chinese kung fu I could find in York, which was where I grew up, was Wing Chun. So I started doing Wing Chun at the age of 14. Then at the age of 18, I decided that I wanted to go and see China. I wanted to see where kung fu came from. Now, I was a very introverted, shy kid. I didn't really fit in very well. Like, I didn't really know how to get along with people. I kind of was aimless in life. I dropped out of school when I was 16, and I was just washing dishes in a restaurant for 2 years, from 16 to 18, and then I was training Wing Chun, I think like 3-4 nights a week or something, and that was basically the only sort of like, the only thing that had any real meaning in my life at that time. So that's what I was doing. I don't know what it was from being such an aimless person without sort of any real ambition to suddenly being like, hey, I'm gonna go off to China and see where kung fu comes from. But I don't know, I did. So then, you know, had me 18 years old, you know, fresh to the world, naive, innocent guy, lining up at the British Airways counter at Heathrow Airport in London, waiting to board a flight to Beijing, having no idea what the hell was in store for me. So I was going to Xi'an, the ancient capital of China, to do a 3-month volunteer thing, and then I spent another 3 months backpacking through Western China, through Tibet, and then on to Nepal and India. And that was a whole 6-month trip. And that absolutely changed me. It blew my mind that this is also a part of our world, like, you know, how different life can be. You know, like being up on the Tibetan plateau, staying in Buddhist monasteries, you know, interacting with Tibetan monks, staying with nomads on the grasslands and interacting with them and seeing how they lived, you know, going to Nepal while there was a political upheaval going on. I actually had a gun pointed at me, an AK-47 pointed at me. There was a Maoist uprising at the time. So, you know, that just completely changed me. And I went back to the UK. I went back to my old job washing dishes and hanging out with my old friends that kind of did nothing really but just smoked weed and, you know, were living on the dole. Like, none of them really had any jobs or sort of anything. We just sit around playing Grand Theft Auto, smoking weed, and I'm like, this is not what I want to do with my life. And I was trying to tell them these stories of things that had happened to me in Asia, and, you know, they'd listen, and then as soon as I finished, they'd be like, oh yeah, well, you know, Pitsy put his fist through a window in the pub, or, you know, Gemma got pregnant, or, you know, they just have these really dull, like, typical British chav stories about nothing. And I'm like, man, this is not the life I want to live. I don't want to do this. So I spent the next maybe half a year or year, I can't remember exactly how long it was, just saving up as much money as I could. And then I was like, right, I'm going to move back to China. And I wanted to move to Guangdong originally, so I was trying to look for a English teaching job in Foshan, because I wanted to study Wing Chun, like in its birthplace. But I couldn't find any jobs in Guangdong at the time, so I ended up finding a job in Qingdao, in Shandong province. And that is the next part of the story, which I shall share shortly. Alright, so I'm going to show you guys inside this station, because this is the most bizarre thing. Like, you would not imagine from outside walking down this road in the absolute middle of nowhere just the size and scale of this station. It's crazy. So I'm going to take you guys inside and show you. So what did I say? They've built all of this in the last, I think, 2 or 3 years. Like, this was not here. This was not here in 2020. And I don't think they started building it through COVID because everything was shut down. So I'm guessing they probably were building it from about 2023. So I'm gonna say 2 to 5 years to build this entire thing. And I swear it honestly looks like, it feels like we're walking into like Area 51 or something. I'm almost imagining there's gonna be some kind of UFO or some like secret military base down here. I mean, just look at the scale of it. And we're going down one more floor. You can see how deep this damn thing is. Like, this probably could double up as an air defense shelter or something if there's ever a war with America. Smile, you're on camera. There's a lot of security cameras in China as well now. So check out how many cameras they've got facing this escalator. Like, nobody coming into this station is going to be missed. And then just look at the size of it. This is absolutely massive. And then they've got all the security over there, which is normal for any of China's like subways, metros, trains. They've always got the security thing. They're quite serious about that. Check out this entire row of security cameras there. And just look how big this place is. It's absolutely massive. And it's in the middle of nowhere, basically. I mean, you know, we're in Sanlin, we're in a small suburb right on the edge of Shanghai. And this place is just huge. And then it goes down another floor down there. So yeah, it's like 3 stories down. As I say, can probably double up as a nuclear bunker if there's ever a war with America over the island that shall not be talked about. Yeah, that's that. So just wanted to show you that. And I shall now take you to this village as promised. Alright, so yeah, you can see the size of it from here. I mean, look at that massive, great big support beam up there. It just shows you how big this place is. But yeah, the security guards were kind of staring at me, so I figured I won't hang around too long. You know, foreigner with a camera, an American spy. But yeah, so the second part of the story, I got to Qingdao in 2008, and this is actually how I got started training Mantis Kung Fu, because I'd heard of it, obviously I think most people have, but I didn't know anything about it. And it was only after I was in Qingdao and I was teaching English there that I found out that Shandong is actually the birthplace and the home of Mantis Kung Fu. So I went about looking for teachers in Qingdao, and it's very hard. At the time, I only spoke the most basic Chinese. Like, I could order food in a restaurant, I could take a taxi, I could hold very basic conversations about, you know, likes and dislikes and things like that. But I couldn't really communicate fully, so it was very hard to know who were the best teachers to go to, where was the right place to look, how do I get in contact with these people. So I just would get up at sort of 5 a.m, 6 a.m. every morning, and I would go down to the local parks and I just explore, and I just try my best doing my basic Chinese to talk to different teachers. And I started training a few different things. I did some Shaolin Kung Fu, I did some Long Fist, I did do some quite basic Mantis Kung Fu. I did some Tai Chi push hands, so I did quite a few different things, but I never really found exactly what I was looking for. And so then 2009, I decided to go to a big Kung Fu academy just outside Yantai, which is a city a few hours north of Qingdao, also in Shandong province. And I went to a big Kung Fu school there that was pretty much like set up especially for foreigners. It's like a full-time live-in Shaolin academy called Kunyushan. And I trained there for a year. I didn't actually train Shaolin, I trained Mantis and Bagua. And that was really great because I trained for like 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, you know, extra training by yourself on the weekends, exploring the mountains. There's lots of Taoist temples and things around there. It was very cool. And, you know, it was great because I got all the fundamentals of Kung Fu. I got to learn all the stances, the basics, you know, got in amazing shape. Just, you know, the amount of physical training we were doing, learnt a lot of forms, Qigong, and all that sort of stuff. We did a lot of sanda as well. We'd have full contact sanda fights between the different styles, kind of inter-style, kind of unofficial matches that we'd have. I think they were like every month, sometimes twice a month on a Friday morning. So, you know, getting a lot of that full contact fight experience, you know, kind of the whole package. But after a year, I felt like, okay, I kind of plateaued now. It's time to move on. And I was thinking, well, you know, these young coaches at Kunyushan, where are they going? Like, who are their teachers? Where are they getting their Kung Fu from? I'm in China. I now speak pretty good Chinese. Why don't I just go to the source? So I left Kunyushan. Okay, so here's this old village where me and Jayo were filming the other day. I'll explain it in a sec after this part of the story. So I figured I'm going to just sign up to a language program in Yantai and just sort of on a side note, if you are wanting to move to China to train martial arts, aside from one of these big commercial academies, signing up to a language program in a city where they train the martial art you're interested in is probably going to be the cheapest and best option. You'll get a visa, you'll get a dormitory, you do classes a few hours a day, language classes in the mornings, and then the afternoon you can go off and try and find a teacher. So that's something I highly recommend you look into if you want to get started on this journey that I've done. So I then moved to Yantai, and there was a list called the Yantai 10 Famous Masters, or Yantai 10大全师. And so I looked up on the internet, I looked up the contact details and locations of all these different 10 masters, and I went to visit pretty much all of them. And then I decided that Zhou Jiandong was the teacher that struck a chord with me the most, the teacher that I found, like he's the kind of person I want to learn from. His personality, his teaching style, his art kind of is the best fit with me. So I ended up becoming his student. And I stayed in Yantai, training full-time with him. I was doing the language program a couple of hours in the morning, and then I was training with him every afternoon. And then later I left the language program, I got a visa another way, but then I was working in a kindergarten in the mornings teaching English, and then I was training all afternoon. So I did that for about 5 or so years, pretty much training like sort of 3-4 hours a day with Zhou Jiandong, like pretty much every day. So this would have been someone's home at some point. Look at it now, it's just absolute mess. Someone's left a lot of cat food, probably for all the stray cats. Yeah, look at the paintings on the wall. It's probably quite a nice house. We've got this kind of traditional Chinese painting. There's another one there of a pagoda that's been pretty much worn away. It's like little kids' shoes, just all sorts of stuff here. So this probably would have been the kitchen, I imagine. Yeah, that would have been the kitchen. Look, they've still got their like oil and soy sauce and vinegar out there, and kitchenware. Look at it. That's the outhouse. A lot of these old style Chinese houses, the toilets usually sort of outdoors, so they would have probably, I'm assuming, had the toilet in some sort of shed here where the front of it's probably already demolished. There's a little outhouse there. I don't know what they would have used that for. I don't want to step down there, I don't want to step on anything weird. So and I don't think I'm going to trust the staircase. I don't think I'm going to go upstairs because it looks, I'll go up a little bit, but I don't want to go all the way up in case the whole thing collapses on me. Yeah, look, you can see all upstairs. Actually, it does look okay. Well, if something did happen, I don't think anyone would find me in this place, so I'm probably not going to go up. Maybe the bedrooms and stuff up there. So we found out last time we were here filming that there was actually still a family that lives in this house inside, so I don't want to go right up because I don't really want to disturb their privacy, but they basically live in that house there, and then you can see in this one in front, I'm just going to zoom in, you can see this Chinese character, Chai. So Chai means to demolish or to tear down. Basically what that means is they put this on the front of a house to say that this house is scheduled for demolition. So when they say scheduled for demolition, basically all land and property in China is owned by the state. Being a communist country, there isn't private property. And so land is basically leased. Properties are leased. And so with these old villages, basically what happens is, they're very old, they're very run down, the facilities are not really in working order anymore, and the government moves in and then they basically say, right, you guys have all got to move out. We're taking over this land and we're going to develop on it. And so the government will offer the people that live there some sort of compensation. Maybe they'll offer them another apartment, like a newly sort of high-rise, like the sort of ones that you can see behind me there. They may offer them something like that. They may offer them a cash settlement. You know, it really depends. And there's a lot of negotiation that goes into this. And so you can see this other house behind me here. I'm not sure if the camera picks it up, but it does also have the Chai characters on it. But there's still clearly people living in there. You can see there's washing lines and everything up, but everything around it has been completely demolished. It's the only house that's left. And likewise, there's an old man or family still living in that house behind, surrounded by these abandoned ones. So basically what happens is, in a lot of cases, these people refuse to leave. They want more money or more, they want better compensation from the government. So, the government will send in the demolition teams. They'll start basically tearing down the village, which is what you can see. All of this rubble here, this would have been this entire village. And so these people will basically stay here. And while everything is demolished around them, they just refuse to budge. And they're like, well, no, we're not going to let you complete demolition. You can't begin developing whatever the new project is until we get more. We want more than what you're offering us. So they basically just stay there in protest and wait for a better deal. So behind me there's another completely demolished one, and this one looks like it's probably still got people living in it. I mean, there's even cars parked up there. And I don't think, we can talk about poverty, but, given that these are pretty nice cars, I mean, they're not going to be cheap. So the people that are living in these houses they're not exactly poor. That's kind of one of the interesting things that I find with China is it's very, very hard to tell somebody's wealth, because they might live in this very dilapidated, collapsed, semi-collapsed house that is surrounded by destruction and, quite frankly, looks like a scene from, Ukraine or Gaza, but, they've got nice cars that are not cheap. They clearly can afford much more than just the basic necessities of life. They're not doing badly. So that period of living in Yantai, training Mantis Kung Fu with Zhou Jiandong, that would have been probably one of the most formative periods in my journey. I started writing a blog earlier than that, actually. 2007, when I first moved to China, I wrote my first blog just documenting my travels when I was 18, going through China and through Tibet and Nepal and India. And that blog was called Empty Your Cup. I think the website would have been like usefulnessisemptiness.blogspot.com. That may even still be up online. I haven't looked for years, so you can have a look for that if you're interested. It wasn't very well written. It was really just me sharing things that I was getting up to. And then from there, when I moved to Yantai, I then set up a website called Monkey Steals Peach, which was kind of an extension of the original blog. And I got the name Monkey Steals Peach from a form that I was learning at the time in Mantis, which is called Baiyuan Total, which actually means White Ape Steals Peach. But I just kind of simplified the name to make it a bit more catchy, and I named my website that. And on this website, I started documenting some of the history and different things I was learning about Mantis Kung Fu while living in Yantai. I started translating some historical documents, collecting, different things. I started to do some written interviews with some different martial art teachers around the city, and also kind of continued my blog, just documenting my time living there. And some of that's still up. Like, I still have the website, but I've updated it. It's undergone a lot of changes, and I've made it a bit more into a profile of my channel and everything that I do now. So there's not as much of the original blogs and articles on there. I do really need to re-upload those at some point. But so that's where Monkey Steals Peach started. And at the same time, this would have been 2013, 2014. I really knew that I wanted to make videos, but I just didn't know how. I had absolutely no idea how to get started with YouTube, how to make videos, and I tried. I had a few failed attempts. I made a few little montages of just me training with some cool music, and I put those up on a previous channel that I no longer have access to. And I tried to make some vlogs where I was talking to the camera about, you know, different things in Yantai, Mantis Kung Fu and stuff, but I just found it very difficult to talk to the camera. I found it very difficult to make the videos. I was quite camera shy, so it didn't really work. And then it was later, I moved to South Korea for a year, and I was learning Taekyon there. And then I came back to China and I moved to Shanghai. And it was when I was in Shanghai that I really started doing YouTube properly. So I'm going to take you to another little village now that's still actually inhabited, still fully lived in. I'll show you that, and then I'll tell you the next part of the story there. So this here is still a very much active Chinese village. It's not, as I say, it's not village in the way that you think of, you know, some beautiful ancient Chinese canal town with all the traditional gardens and everything for the tourists, but this is very much a typical example of kind of semi-rural China. Like, don't forget, we're still in Shanghai right now. We are technically in the city, but this is a village. There is farmland around. There are people growing vegetables and things. And I would say this is probably a good example of what a lot of China was looking like. This is sort of a remnant of maybe Cultural Revolution era China. You know, so if you want to kind of imagine what things would have been like in the 60s and 70s, I think this village is quite a good example of that. As you can see, there's plans to demolish this house on the edge of the village, and there is actually a sign saying that it's the construction is dangerous, do not enter. There's some, looks like it might be a leftover Cultural Revolution era slogan or something on the wall, Bai Nian Da something, like 100 years great something, but we can't see the rest of it. I'm assuming it probably goes all along here. Maybe it was a revolutionary era propaganda slogan, but we'll never know. And there's the bit of land where they're growing some vegetables, and well, they're not really right now. Oh, they are. There's some corn, something over there. And then this is the village, and as I say, it's still very much fully inhabited. So I would imagine the people that are living in this village are going to be a combination of, you know, just local people that have grown up and lived here their whole lives. But there's also a lot of, you see here, there's another demolished, it's like an old mansion, but it's pretty much completely derelict, and it's a shame. It looked like it probably would have been a really nice house, but yeah, it's completely abandoned out there. I actually thought someone might still live in it, but it doesn't look like it. There's no glass in any of the windows or anything. I wish I could kind of know some of the story of who lived in this house, why it's so big, and how it came to be abandoned. You can see they've got all their corn and stuff. 你好。这个我就是好奇，这个那么大的房子为什么是空的？我觉得这个房子挺好看的。很好看吗？都空的呀，你看。现在空的，以前如果没有空，应该很好看的，很大的，很多窗户。也没用了。啊，为什么是要拆掉吗？对呀。啊，好可惜，我这句房子挺好看的。你们老家也有的了。有，一样的，一样的。对，一样的。特别好。So that was the. Don't think they were too happy about me filming in here, but I mean, ultimately, I'm in a public place, so you know, it is what it is. But yes, I was saying that in this village, there's probably going to be a mixture of like local residents and maybe some, you know, construction workers or, you know, migrant workers that have come into work in Shanghai and they just need somewhere with incredibly cheap rents, so they'll probably be staying in somewhere like this. But yeah, it's sort of still mostly lived in, but I think people are slowly moving out and abandoning these houses bit by bit. There's a little shop in there with beers and Lots of alcohol and cigarettes. There's another abandoned house there. I think this village probably is going to be mostly demolished. That woman said that that house was going to be. There's a demolished sign on this building here. You can see. You can see a lot of these little scooters coming through. I think a lot of the guys living in Shanghai that are, you know, working as delivery men or whatever, probably living. I mean, look, you got a BMW in there, so it's not like they ain't got any money or anything. There's another. These are all sort of pretty much completely abandoned. Let's take a look around the back here. Yeah, these have all been completely demolished. There's another sort of mansion thing there. So that house there that had the BMW in it has a sign on the front saying that it's like a registered accommodation for construction workers. And then, you know, you've got these sort of dilapidated houses. And then further behind, I said there's a couple of these big kind of mansions. I think those mansions probably would have been built later, sort of maybe in the 80s during the reform period. You know, people kind of started to get money and they want, you know, they got a bit of land that they can build on. I'm not sure whether it's legal or illegal construction, but they, you know, a lot of people kind of get this idea that they want like a European style mansion, right? They want to feel like they're rich and new. And so yeah, this village is kind of an interesting sign of the times. You can see these two very different styles of construction from two very different periods of Chinese history and very different outlooks on life that people had, you know, just a couple of decades apart, where, you know, you've gone from this kind of Maoist proletariat era to, you know, the 80s where everyone suddenly wants to get rich, and, you know, as Deng Xiaoping said, it's glorious to get rich, and people want to kind of show off a bit more and they want to embrace, you know, capitalism and Western things and kind of show that they're worldly. So yeah, quite interesting. My battery is running out. Let's go to the final part of the story, which is when I started my YouTube channel after I moved here to Shanghai. So I originally started the Jianghu channel with my friend Josh, who had lived up in Dongfeng at the Shaolin Temple for about 15 years, and the idea was we were going to make martial art tutorials. However, unfortunately, after only about a year, he decided to move back to the UK, and that channel kind of just ended there. We only just got started. I think that would have turned into something great, but unfortunately, you know, he had other things he wanted to do in life. So he moved on. And so I decided, well, I'm going to continue making YouTube by myself. I've already started with him. I'm already starting to get some ideas about how to make videos and things. So yeah, after Josh left, I was at university here in Shanghai. I was self-employed teaching English as well. So I had, you know, quite flexible time. And I figured, you know what? Why don't I just go and I start interviewing different teachers around China? So I then got in contact with my friend Joel Ackerman, who was going to train with his teacher Hu Zhengsheng at their school in Dongfeng that summer. This was 2019 or 2018 or 2019, and I said to him, hey, why don't I come up visit you, and we'll ask your teacher to introduce us to some of the old masters that are still preserving the old village styles of Shaolin, and we'll try and film some interviews and some vlogs with them. And I had absolutely no idea what I was doing at all then. Like, neither of us did. We just went to Shaolin and we went around the villages around Dongfeng and we just filmed these interviews, you know, with a small little camera. Joel did get some very cinematic shots with his drone as well, but it was very, very ad hoc, very just in the moment. We had no sort of real planning or understanding of what we were doing. And that was pretty much that. The series, it then took off. I then did a second series with my friend John Nicklin, where we explored all the different styles of Xingyi. I took some of the lessons I'd learned from filming in Shaolin, and I tried to, you know, improve on that. And yeah, then I got contacted by Jesse Enkamp later that year, who said, hey, I want to come to China. I want to explore the origins of karate in Fujian province. Like, can you take me around? So that was it, you know. The channel was established. I just passed 1,000 subscribers. It's sort of the first big milestone you get with your channel, I guess, when you can officially call yourself a YouTuber. And so that was that. I mean, I was fortunate that I already knew how to speak Chinese. I knew how to navigate China quite well. I'd always spent quite a number of years living here. But as far as doing YouTube, I didn't really know what I was doing. There wasn't sort of any proper playbook or anything. I just had an idea and I went ahead and did it, and I stuck at it and it worked. So, I mean, my wish is, as far as I know, I'm the only person on YouTube doing these sorts of martial art videos, traveling around and documenting different styles and different masters and telling the stories of the martial arts here in China. I know my friend Byron Jacobs is doing something a bit different, but also similar up in Beijing with his Mushin Martial Culture channel, which I think is a really great channel. You should go check that out. But yeah, what I want to say is that if, you know, for any of you guys that are also living here in China, or if you're living elsewhere, you know, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Southeast Asia, Japan, whatever, I really, really want to see more people doing this kind of stuff, because the main reason that I started doing this is because it was the kind of content I wanted to watch, and I couldn't find other people making this sort of content. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to just do it. And yeah, I would just love to see other people. I'd love to see other adventures, people going off into remote parts of China, documenting rare styles. I mean, there's lots of us that do speak Chinese and that live out here. And I've met a lot of amazing people that have had amazing adventures out here. So yeah, all you need is a camera and an internet connection and a bit of local knowledge. All right, so I've left the village now. I'm just back on the main road, heading home back to my newly built apartment block on the new side of town. Things started to get quite tense in the village towards the end there. There was a lot of very stern stares from people seeing, you know, a foreigner walking around with a camera. I got told off by an old lady for filming an abandoned derelict house. She was saying, "What's wrong? Don't you have these kind of houses in your own country?" And I was just kind of saying, yeah, it's the same. I just think the house looks very cool. You know, it was a great big mansion. It's just a shame to see it empty. So this kind of stuff, you know, is honestly quite sensitive. I get that. There is a concern here about the perception of China in Western media. You know, a lot of people feel that Western media is very, very biased against China, only shows the most negative sides of China, which I can't say is totally wrong. There is much more of a focus on the negative than the positive, and it's also something that's very difficult to really address these days properly, because if you say anything good about China, you're automatically labeled as CCP shill on social media. If you say anything bad about China, you're labeled as, you know, some anti-China, you know, Western media puppet, blah, blah, blah. So I get it, you know, this stuff's very sensitive, but at the end of the day, you know, I was only showing in an objective way just a portion of real life here in China, a side of China that you don't really get to see very often. And, you know, I suppose it is not the most picturesque thing and not something people necessarily want you to see, but at the end of the day, it is the reality, and so it is what it is. I'm not going to try and like paint a picture of it being some, you know, dismal kind of hell on earth place, but I'm also not going to pretend that China's all like, you know, a dancing socialist paradise. It's just, it's a country with its good and its bad like any others. And talking of the perceived bias on China coverage in Western media, this brings me on to the sponsor of today's video. Now, I'm sure you guys know me well enough to know that if I'm going to put my name to something, it is something I truly believe in, and that's why I want to share with you guys Ground News. Ground News is an app and website that combines news from around the world in one place so you can compare coverage. For every news source, you can see if they have a political bias, how reliable their reporting is, and who owns them. You can verify your information and know where the news is coming from. With ground news, you can see what the media is exaggerating, sensationalizing, over or under-reporting. You can see who funds each publication, compare coverage, and think critically about the information you consume. Go to check.ground.news/monkeystealspeach to check it out now. If you subscribe for my link, you get 40% off the Vantage subscription. And so yes, that is the story of Monkey Steals Peach, how this YouTube channel came about from a very small blog when I was just traveling through Asia to a website documenting my research and training up in Yantai to a YouTube channel which now has over 100,000 subscribers. I think about 125,000 at the time of making this video. So thank you so much to all of you for your support. This would not be what it is without all of you. So I'm truly appreciative. And yes, I think that this next few years, now that I'm back here in China, is going to be amazing for this channel. I think I'm going to accomplish so much and it's going to grow massively. So yeah, thank you all and see you in the next video. I've got lots of exciting things coming up.